All right, so for those of you I don't know yet, I'm Mel Hauser. I use she, they pronouns, and I'm executive director here at All Brains Belong, Vermont. And we are going to be talking about something that we want everyone to be talking about, and that is access needs. And if that term is new to you, we are excited to introduce you to the concept, and we will get to learn from our wonderful panelists here about what this is like for you. And if you've not been to Brain Club before, this is our weekly community education series where every month we have a different topic. And so this month for June, our topic is designing a life that works for your brain. And we'll do a little bit of a recap from last week about niche construction, designing a life based on your brain, and then and that was about figuring out your needs. And today is the next part of that. Now you figure out your needs. How do you communicate that to other people? So by way of ground rules, all forms of participation are okay here. You can have your video on or off, even if you're a panelist. And we don't expect, we have no like default expectations here. So walk, move, look where you want, do what you want, fidget, eat, all the things. And you can communicate however you want to. You can unmute at any given time and just like shout things out. You can flag us down. You can, you can use the wave hand feature. But if we don't see you in a timely manner, just shout it out or type in the chat box. Anything that works for you. And it's really important to us here that we affirm all aspects of identity and that we are creating a safety culture here, which includes that if anyone's going to talk about anything potentially distressing, we just ask that you give a heads up with a content warning. Okay. If you're like me and you are using closed captioning, if it's not popping up automatically, you look for two different choices. It's usually one or the other, either a live CC transcript thing at the bottom, or if not, more ... and show subtitles or live transcript. All right. So last week, if you weren't with us last week, we talked about getting to know your brain. What are the things about you, how your brain does something? How do you process information? What comes easily? What is hard? How do you communicate? What are you interested in, or how do you play? How much me time versus we time do you need? What's stressful? What's regulating? How do you most comfortably express yourself? How do you think? How do you learn? So the recording's up on the website if you missed that one, but we went into details of all those things. The idea is that if you get to know your brain, then you can plan your life around it and not, you can see what in your current situation is working well for you and what's not working, and then what would work better. So that's niche construction, and which is the idea that we have, this is Maslow's pyramid, right? So we've got the things that we need kind of in hierarchical order. And so the physiologic things we need they got to come first. And if you don't know what they are, because they're different for all of us, then you're not going to be able to feel safe in the world and then purposefully engaging and participating in the things in your community in all the ways that you want to participate. Because what we don't want is we don't want to be trying to fit that square peg into the round hole. Because what happens when you break the peg, and we do not want that to happen to us. And that for so many people is what happens. And we're just like, oh yeah, I can do the thing. No, yeah, you can do the thing, but at cost. So that brings us to access needs. Access needs are, we're going to come back to that in a second. So what does it mean to access? It means to participate, it means to do the thing. That's all I mean by that. And so all people have access needs. It's anything that is required to meaningfully participate in one's environment, community activities. So everyone, regardless of how your brain works, you have some kind of access needs. And these things these may vary, depending on the environment that you're in, the particular activity, the context, your overall, gestalt of your life. But everyone has access needs. We went through, actually, like, it seems like maybe it's like somebody hit the random button on my slides and like the order's like not the way that I intended them. Anyway, so types of access needs. There are so many. We can be talking about in physical access needs, things in your environment, things to support mobility, things to support sensory processing, either to get you the kind of sensory input that you need or protect you from the sensory input that you do not need. Emotional access needs. What is required to feel emotionally safe and connected? Communication. What's the format of the information presented to you? What's the format of the information you give back? Do you need more processing time or a different kind of processing speed? And of course, sensory related aspects of communication. I'm just giving you like big bucket overview, so that we've got context to take in the information from our panelists. So interpersonal or social access needs. I think there's just so many, there's so many differences in all of these things, but I think all too often, especially like as little kids, we're told like, well, this is how you interact. This is how you play. This is how you socialize. And people kind of grow up feeling like, well, there's one way to do the thing and I'm going to go do that thing because I have to, but it feels so awful. Well, then that's not meeting your access needs. Technology access needs. And like, I think that we really should have its like multiple brain clubs on technology access needs because there are so many barriers to accessing technology. There's other medical access needs, allergies. Like let's say that I have anaphylaxis to peanuts. Like my access need is for there to not be peanuts, right? So this is all going to be so variable. I wonder if there's any other types of access needs that people can think of. This is what I came up with. Go ahead, Matthew.
Education material access needs, about how to understand the curriculum you are trying to present, but also to understand.
Right. So how in educational settings, how is information delivered? And it's even my 5-year-old and I, we've been discussing this because my 5-year-old, my sweet little dictator, is giving information in one particular way. And I'm like, no. I have the kind of brain that I want to make sure I got it and I want to repeat back to you. Because you want to make sure I heard you and that I understood you and that I, have encoded what you wanted. No. So anyway, that's conflicting access needs. And we'll get to that in a second. But first, I want to just say one thing about, gosh, come on, computer. All right. This cartoon is showing the difference between the medical model of disability and the social model, which is that in the medical model of disability, we say, well, people have impairments and they can't do the thing because there's something wrong with them. But really, for the past 20 years, the World Health Organization has defined disability in terms of the social model, which is that disability is relative. It is about how much barrier there is to access. So if you are in an environment that has more barriers to your access, you are in fact going to have more disability. So, an example, time out. Sorry, I didn't notice in the chat, Laura's suggested moral access needs, like when one person's morality is in direct opposition to another person's. Oh, yes. Yes, that's absolutely. And we can talk more about that as an example of conflicting access needs. That is just so common. And when we don't acknowledge that this is about access needs, then everyone's got foot on the gas and flipping their lids, and we don't actually have meaningful dialogue and understanding of perspective. I think that's anyway. So, inaccessible world. So, in January, we talked about that everyone flips their lid because everyone has a limbic system. Everyone gets dysregulated. We all have, various physical, emotional, cognitive, social stressors, all kinds of things. And if we don't know about this ourselves and we don't know how to communicate that to other people, and the culture is such that it's not safe to communicate those things to other people, no longer we're setting ourselves up to have conflicting access needs. When you've got multiple people who don't know their own brains, that's a lot of explosion. Because like it or not, when our limbic system, which is our automatic part of our brain that responds, or rather reacts involuntarily to threat in the environment, so this is our downstairs brain, if you will, we are going to not be able to access like our thinking part of our brain. And when we have two dysregulated people, two people not having their access needs met, we do not have effective interactions in the world. I'm going to play a quick video, except I never remember to share the sound. So we've got two people with access needs that they have not communicated. Except with volume this time. So my technology access needs are that someone else runs my technology. I have not communicated that to anybody. So here we go.
All 12 of your brothers to stay with us. No. Of course we have the room. I don't know, some of them must
slow down. No one's brothers are staying here. No one is getting married.
Wait, what?
May I talk to you, please? Alone?
No. Whatever you have to say, you can say to both of us.
Fine. You can't marry a man you just met.
You can if it's true love.
Anna, what do you know about true love?
Well, more than you. All you know is how to shut people out.
You asked for my blessing, but my answer is no. Now, excuse me.
Your Majesty, if I may ease
No,
your...
you may not, and I think you should go. The party is over. Close the gates.
Yes, Your Majesty.
Elsa, no, wait! Give me my glove! Elsa, please! I can't live like this anymore!
Then leave.
What did I ever do to you?
Enough, Anna.
No, why? Why do you shut me out? Why do you shut the world out? What are you so afraid of? I said enough!
So, hold on, stop. Okay, all right. So, I wonder, what did anybody notice about access needs? Go ahead, Matthew.
Language barrier, understanding that language barrier within that presentation. It looks like, it sounds like she was trying to communicate in a way that was on a set stage with her, but it sounds like it was, jarbled, but communication.
Right. So each other's communication was not received by the other. And both of them had access needs about how they needed to receive information, including, I can't handle information right now. I need space. I need to leave. And then anyway, no, you're not leaving. No, anyway. How often does that happen in everyday life, do we think? Like a lot. Yeah. So I think with that, I think I'm going to just introduce our panel and to hear about their real life experiences. So we've got 3 panelists today that I'm so excited that you're here. We have Sierra Miller, nurse practitioner here at All Brains Belong, Vermont. Matthew LaFleur, who is one of our members of our community advisory board and a disability advocate around the state, and Biz Barker, who is a fourth-year medical student at the University of Vermont and one of my favorite people in the universe. So maybe we can just start with if everyone can, maybe we can take turns just like introducing yourself and sharing kind of what the topic of access needs means to you, and then I'll ask you some questions. Who wants to go first? Go ahead, Matthew.
Yes, thank you, Mel. Greetings, everyone. My name is Matthew LaFleur from Alburg, Vermont, in Grand Isle County, and actually, technically, Franklin County. Yes, I'm a disability advocate around the state of Vermont. I serve on 6 or 7 subcommittees around the state of Vermont to bring up this, what you call access needs, accessibility needs to the services and programs throughout Vermont and throughout the state, statewide. With me, with access needs, it's meaning of, everyone can participate, everybody has a part to play moving forward, and we can unite together about, explain why access need is so critical moving forward, because we all deserve to be respected for who we are, not what we are, and what other people think. And letting them know that access needs to services, that means communication, technology, etc., you name it, is the foundation of how Vermonters and the United States of America works, as accessibility needs, accessibility to these services within the network of, the way of our lives and our everyday, every being of ourselves. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Sierra, you want to go next?
Absolutely. Hi, everybody. I'm Sierra, she, her pronouns, and I am sitting outside, so if you hear traffic noise, it's because I'm on my porch. I think about access needs as similar to what we've talked about, anything that anybody needs to feel safe, comfortable, included, and access anything. For me, I think about access needs in a few different ways. I think as a queer person, for like accessing healthcare, I want my healthcare providers to be knowledgeable about what I'm going to need as a queer person, and me not have to explain my needs to healthcare providers, because that's not my job in that role. As a person living in a fat body, I need to make sure anywhere I'm going has seating that's going to be accessible to me, whether that means no arms on the sides of the chairs, or whether that means it's not going to be a plastic chair. I've broken many a plastic chair in my time. And so making sure physically the place is accessible, as well as emotionally. So those are kind of the big access needs that I was thinking about before coming in today.
Thank you, Sierra. And I'm sorry for not adding your spotlight in time. Now you're all spotlit. Hi, Biz, your turn.
Hi, I'm Biz. I'm a 4th-year medical student. I think that my access needs, like a lot of people's, have really changed throughout my lifetime. And I think it's really interesting to kind of reflect back on how my access needs have changed, and my story, or like my progression of advocating for myself more, and like how I ask for my access needs and advocate for myself for those needs. So I would say that when I was younger, I think that like one of the big things for me is lights. Really bright overhead fluorescent lights just give me headaches and overwhelm me, and I can't be me. So when I was really young, I remember in elementary school, I'd wear sunglasses, or I'd have overlays for when I was reading on my books. And then as I got older, like those access or those like accommodations to help me access those environments were given to me kind of like by the school. And then I think that as I grew, that's mostly where I relied on to get my access needs and help identify my access needs. So it was usually through like schools accommodation services. But as I've gotten older, I've been able to identify my own access needs and better advocate for myself in other environments. So I think that at least most recently, in the last couple of years, I've gotten a lot more comfortable asking for different things in my environment with like my family and friends, and practicing asking them for my access needs has also kind of helped me kind of grow and now start being able to advocate and ask for my access needs in other environments like the hospital or at med school. So I just think it's always something in a moment, but it's also like really transient, which I think is great.
Thank you for sharing that. I wonder, not just for Biz, but for any of you, when we think about people who are first learning that it's okay to have needs at all, what advice do you have for people who are beginning the journey of being like, oh, I have access needs, let alone be able to communicate that? Matthew, go ahead.
Speak up. Don't be afraid to ask that tough question. Because when you ask that question, you're actually answering about when will I get my needs met? I'm asking because I need that thing, or I need, a certain device to help me live. But the tough question is asking for help. Not very many of us have that certain easy to understand language, which is also a language barrier within the systems that we have created, because they're limited with accessibility. But what we need to is expand that broader coverage of accessibility to that language barriers and understand that language too as well, to get the individuals' needs met.
Matthew, I love what you just said, because it prompts me to zoom out and say, well, if someone were speaking a different language, let's say I only spoke French and I arrived to a room of English speakers and everyone was speaking English and I only spoke French, I would not be able to access whatever the conversation was or whatever the material was. I wonder, maybe it really would be helpful to really reframe all access that way. Because I would say that, Biz, if you say I can't be myself, I can't function like in this like environment that is violating my sensory access needs, that is the equivalent of me speaking French and walking to a room where nobody's speaking my language. Like, it's the same. And I think that it is part of, we talked last week about ableism in terms of it's like any other ism, where there is the belief that the ability to do the thing is superior to not being able to do the thing. It ends up being, that light thing, that's like optional. But like that French thing, it's not optional. They are the same. They are access needs. I wonder, I don't know, I just made that up. I wonder if anybody has anything to say about that. Pink sticky.
Hey, I went on disability a couple of years ago. I had been working full time, and people say like, speak up for your needs. And when I was working, I would, and that was accommodated. But it seems like when you have multiple people who, like, my housing and my finances and my food are at the discretion of various different caseworkers. And a lot of times they see my access needs as like ingratitude. Like I should just be like, thank you for being here at all, And a lot of times it doesn't feel safe to ask for accommodation.
Yeah, and thank you for sharing that. And I think that that is the case for so many people in so many settings. And so that is why it is best to not put people in that position. It is best that when there is an imbalance of power, that the person who has the imbalance of power in their favor, it is their job to create a culture where access needs are checked in with. And in so many instances, that not only doesn't happen, but it's the opposite of that, where it's not only am I not doing my job to check in about your access needs, but I'm making it unsafe for you to advocate for yourself. And that's why we're having conversations like this, because I think and again, it's only been 6 months since I quit my job, and now I have autonomy over my meeting my own access needs. And I am thinking that when I have conversations with people who are engaged in ableist actions and communication, it is abled privilege more than it is anything else. And it is harmful. Abled privilege is harmful, just like any of the explicit or implicit bias and the microaggressions are harmful. And I think that the more that everyone in the community is just having these conversations when it is safe to have them, the more likely it is that it'll just become like part of the fabric of society, where the people who are like interacting with us all are going to know about this, because there's not been enough conversation about this. I mean, for all of the DEI conversations that go on, like usually neurodiversity and access are entirely missing from these conversations. So, it's way behind, but I think I'm hopeful that can happen. Clem, go ahead.
Hi. Yeah, I was thinking about, this is going off of what Vicky contributed, but also I think, Mel, how you started this conversation of like, for people who realize that they have access needs, and then like Vicky said, for people who are trying to communicate those, but having these like emotional realities where for whatever reason it feels unsafe, or it feels like disrespectful or whatever. I was going to say something really similar about like when you kind of realize that you have these access needs, but then there's like an emotional barrier to communicating them because like you feel like they're not going to be respected or whatever it may be. My thinking for that scenario was one is like, yeah, okay, so two things. One is internally, if like I'm having those problems communicating my access needs because I feel like they're not going to be respected, or I feel like they're unnecessary, or I feel like whatever, I found it helpful to just like have a different framing where like you're not asking for something extra, you're asking for like the bare minimum of what you need, and you're not at that level of what you need yet. So you're not asking for extra, you're asking for more in order to reach the minimum because you're currently being underserved. And there's like a lot more examples of like ways that I've kind of been able to like talk myself into like justifying those like questions. Like another one is like, oh, like I'm fine right now. Like I don't need to ask for more access needs like to be met. Like I'm fine. Everything's been fine. This happens a lot at work. Like I'm totally doing fine. I don't need to bother anyone else. And it's like change that framing to ask like, yes, okay, everything's fine, but how can it be better? Because you deserve that. Yeah, so my point is, one, if the conflict is internal, I think there's a lot of ways to kind of talk yourself out of it. And then two, if the conflict is external, like if it is a power dynamic between you and whoever it is that you're communicating with, like I think there's still a powerful tool of like reframing those conversations. Like as much as it sucks for like marginalized people to like kind of tone police themselves, like I think there is a way to like really intentionally not come off as like demanding for accessing benefits or something, like really leveling that conversation down so that it doesn't get charged. But yeah, that's an unfortunate reality of marginalized people who have to tone police themselves in order to access what they need from people in power.
If I could jump in, I would like to say, Vicki, I really appreciate this because I think that I've been experiencing this a lot in like the last couple of years of my life. And I remember Mel being super helpful and teaching me about scripts. And that helped me a lot, knowing that, yes, I'm going to a situation where I'm gonna feel dysregulated because I'm gonna feel nervous about how I'm perceiving other people gonna perceive me. But what Mel helped me do is write a short script of what I needed to say to communicate to the people. And so when I got there to say it, I could just say it and not have to use more parts of my brain and get emotional. And I was able to just say what I needed to say, clearly knowing that I was going to have emotions kind of creep up and I was going to have my nervous system kind of flare up and want to like react. But having just a simple script of what to say took all like the emotion and the physiology and the everything else out of it. And I could communicate more clearly just exactly what I needed.
Oh, I love that. Thank you, Biz. Sierra, go ahead.
Yeah, I think jumping off what everybody said, and I agree. Thank you, Vicki and Clem, for sharing. I think that communicating your access needs to the people of power, and especially the people of power who control your access to those access needs, is really difficult. And one way I like to frame my script creation is centered around productivity, because we live in a capitalist society and that's what gets things, that's what gets you access normally. And so framing it as, if I had the ability to do this, I would be more productive. If I had a 4-day work week, I'm going to be more productive than having a 5-day work week and needing multiple days to recover and my mental health suffering. And so framing it in the framework of whoever is listening is actually going to kind of give you the time of day, which usually is productivity or money.
All the brain rules. Laura.
Yeah, I have a question for people on the panel. This is just super interesting to hear. I'm thinking about conflicting access needs when there isn't really I've ready like an answer, like when it's not a matter of people aren't respecting me, it's a matter of like my kids' need for help in the night versus my need to sleep, is one that comes to mind as they're climbing all over me. Like what happens when it's not a matter of people aren't respecting a need, it's straight up you have a very different need than I do and there's a no-win situation? Like how do people handle that?
I could start talking about this. I'll see, this is off the cuff, so we'll see how far I get. But I think one thing that really jumps to my mind is when me and my boyfriend started living together, we need very different environments to fall asleep. He needs a fan, he needs noise, he needs like the screen so he can like watch it and the bright lights, where I need like dark, silent, calm. And at first I was like, oh my God, we're not gonna be able to live together. How are we gonna do this? So what I found most effective and was that I first found ways for me to accommodate myself in the surroundings. So I figured out I could use earplugs, I could use an eye shield. And then off of that, I was kind of like, see, I can accommodate you. What are some ways you could maybe accommodate me? So then he started figuring out that he could watch shows on his phone in bed with headphones in. So there wasn't bright lights and there wasn't there wasn't like a lot of loud noise for me. So for me, the way obviously you can't always negotiate with children. So it may not work like that. But for me, I think what's always helped is first volunteering how I can change to adapt, and then maybe asking you to change to adapt to me.
Yeah, and I think that's part of the script, right? And so, back to Vicky's example, I think when you are noticing that someone is interacting in a way that is counter to your safety and comfort, and the way that they're viewing you is like based on something that's not real, that's like brain rules. It's like how their brain is, that's their truth of their brain. So like you can't, whatever you're going to say can't challenge that because it's their brain rule. And so if they are, I'm trying to think of an example that's not exactly your example, but like everyone, when people have a way they see the world, as long as you don't challenge it, when you don't challenge their worldview, you can say most things. But a lot of times, especially when we're feeling unsafe, like we can't strategize around that. And so that's where Biz's point, I think, of scripting really comes in. Like when you are safe and when you have access in your culture of interdependence, like when I have to have like a difficult conversation and advocate for myself, I like definitely don't write my own scripts. I definitely reach out to other people, including a lot of the people here who write my scripts for me. So we can help you write your script. Because I think there is something about when you yourself are feeling unsafe, like you're not going to be able to access your cortex to strategize that. It's your safety.
I think jumping off of that, Mel, I think one of the big things that I have had to realize is that, and again, this isn't possible for everybody all the time, but asking other people for help and knowing that it can be a group project and that's okay. And like if there's times when I need some external emotional regulation, I need somebody to talk something through, and my partner's in a space where she needs quiet and she needs to not have any sensory input right now, I need to have other people that I can reach out to and not just rely on one person for all my needs to be met. And I think that's a thing that people fall into often, whether it's with spouses or whether it's with family, and just being able to kind of create that network, like you've said, Mel, of people around you to reach out to when you need something, when your kind of core person isn't able to help.
Thanks, Sierra. Matthew?
Yes, thank you very much. Just to clarify and just to understand that EC2, efficiency way of that script language format of to who are you addressing. The important question is, who are you addressing that issue to? Because there's a lot of different people have a lot of different mindset of accessibility needs. And so as the mother of two children on here, which she pointed out, which is a very tough question and challenging question in general to answer, is who I have accessibility needs. Who can I go to with that same exact needs that I have, or that same exact services that I want to provide, or to provide my family or children that have that same exact needs. And for me, it's about, knowing who your point of contact is, knowing that person that has that same lived experience that like you do yourself, is an important first step to actually understanding, how can I help you, like you said, and how can I help myself, moving forward as a collective mindset and a collective, individuals that understand that efficiency learning of script that were presented, has to actually have accessibility across the aisles so it could be easy to understand for those in power. Thank you.
Yeah, and having that script writing process be the access, like, so just knowing that the access need is to reach out to write scripts. Even having a script is an access need, right? Like in certain situations. I also want to come back to something that Clem said that I thought was really valuable, about the self-talk about perception and kind of where does that come from? Because that's a brain rule too. So when you're a little kid and you are taught the narrative that like asking for something is has like connotations or value associated with it. Like when you ask for something, you are selfish. When you ask for something, you are ungrateful. Well, of course, that's going to stay with you for decades, and you don't want to ask for something and be perceived as ungrateful. And so like, and that's hard to catch when you're in the moment, because you like, so I think to Clem's point about like checking that, like, is that me, or is this person actually giving me that feedback that that's how they're perceiving? And it might be a combination of both. But a lot of times when I am worried about being perceived a certain way, now that I learned that this was a thing, in early parenthood, I read some book about like, figuring out what kind of triggers you and thinking about like, where did that come from? And oh my gosh, it's like all the narratives of childhood, of really not wanting to be perceived a certain way. And so a lot of times I build that into my script. I don't mean to seem ungrateful, and I really need this. Whatever it is, like, so like kind of addressing your liability, or like whether it's real or not real. And a lot of times it is real. That actually can in many ways diffuse the situation. So like Sierra, I often use the yeah, I would get a whole lot more done if it were not so awful. But it's also like I think this person's going to perceive me this way, so I'm just going to name the thing. That's a go-to script of mine. Matthew.
Yes, it's like, and I put it in the chat, it's like self-shaming oneself. It's like, I want to have this access need, but it's like I'm ashamed of myself, to even ask for that need or specific, services that I need. Because, the perspective view of it, not just Vermont, but the United States of America is, as a person that identified with an invisible disability or disability in general, you've been, identified that way, they look at you very, very differently, because they think, and this is their perspective view, that you won't be able to contribute to society, that you won't be able to do all the stuff that, that the non-peers can do. But like I said, it's like we got to change the narrative that around that people, citizens, adults, children, teachers, professors, providers, that yes, we have a disability, but we use our gifts in a meaningful way to share our experiences, so you don't have to be afraid of us. We don't want you to be afraid of us. We want you to accept us for who we are. We want you to ask those tough questions in a way that what makes sense for both parties or all parties in general. Because I would like to tell you about myself. I would also like you to listen to me and understand me as an individual with this disability, because as soon as you learn more about the individuals that have disability, you'll be able to address their needs and concerns and help them, maybe find a way, innovation ways so they can participate in society. Because there's a lot of, ways to participate, but to be able to have that interconnection with individuals or with citizens with disabilities that need that help, those services need. We just have to sit down and actually, have that communication dialogue and understand each other in that meaningful way. Thank you.
Thanks. Vicky.
Sorry. Is it okay if I ask about like a concrete example?
Sure, that would be so helpful. I've been like dancing around hoping that you would.
Oh, thank you. So I have some memory and cognition problems that make it really difficult. I have a hard time with paperwork. And so like when I need help, I'll ask an organization, you know, hey, I have memory issues and some cognition issues, and I want to make sure I don't miss any of the requirements for this program. Can you email rather than mailing me things? And when there are forms, is it possible for me to come to your office and fill them out together or over the phone? And I haven't yet had that actually accommodated ever. So and some most of the time people say sure, but that's as far as it goes, and then it keeps going the normal way. And if I call back and I'm like, hey, I'm still getting mail, then there's like a defensiveness, and I don't want to go there. But I've also had, you know, one place said, you know, if you can't handle your own life, you should get a power of attorney to handle it for you. And that was economic services.
I'm gonna flip my lid. I'm so sorry you were treated in that manner.
Well, I asked, I probably shouldn't have. When I get nervous, I get too factual. But I said like, hey, do you think I could talk to your like ADA compliance officer? There is no way to ask that question that does not piss people off. I'm sorry. So she just hung up on me. So that, but I've like called like their call center before and said like, hey, can you walk me through this form? And they'll say, sure, but you have to go, you know, they'll say you have to go to the office and get such and such. And I go to the office and they're like, we don't do that here. You call back the call center and you tell them. And it's like, I end up, I don't feel like it's my tone necessarily, but I'm not sure how to get that need met.
So it's not your tone, it's not your request, it's nothing you're doing. You are really calling up, you're giving so many great examples of dysfunctional systems that are embedded with ableism. So it's the people, but it's also the system that is built in one default way. We have the paper and we mail it because, you know, all brains can fill out papers and mail them back. No, that's not true at all. We know that's not true. But like, so there's that, but then there's also the systems that are resulting in probably all the workers in them not getting their needs met, which is promoting burnout, right? So you've got the system that's driving burnout and like superimposed ableism. I mean, it's like, this is what goes on. My advice would be to get your access needs met outside of the dysfunctional system. So for example, you would, and I'm happy to like make specific recommendations, but like there are some organizations, but like even in my organization, like people bring us forms all the time to help them with forms, but like there are also some, there are some go-to strategies about having a third party who doesn't work for the department of blah, blah, to help with papers. But like bigger picture is that the system needs to be changed. But in the meantime, I would get your needs met by someone who like actually knows it's their job to help people, because it seems that there are so many people who are unable to recognize that as their role, probably because they're dysregulated. There's so many dysregulated people who have no idea that they're dysregulated. Laura in the chat said, I'm glad you brought up burnout because, you know, working as a nurse, being pushed to my absolute limits in every way likely led to me not being very understanding of other people's access needs, as I was not having my own met and barely hanging on. Oh, that's so true and so well said. Because I think that that's why it begins with everyone learning about your own access needs, because if you're, or just even for, you know, even just zooming out, like, what do I need to feel calm, right? Like what do I need to feel calm? What stresses me out? If people don't have that, because this was not a thing that most adults grew up talking about, And most people have no idea when they're dysregulated, no idea when they have foot on the gas. Like it's just, yeah. And remembering that when we're dysregulated, when we're in limbic mode, we can't access cortex. And so the other people can't either.
I think also when there's a lot on the line and I'm having to ask about access needs, I'm very nervous and I'm conveying that. And I think that gets reflected back a lot.
That's common. And like, you can't get like, so when, and I often think about like, I don't know if you've seen any of our other stuff we've done on like sensory processing, but there's a sense called neuroception, threat detection, sensitivity to energy that really is. So when I have very sensitive neuroception, I can walk into a room and like the vibe just like unsafe radar, right? And so if someone else has that also, and they have no idea usually, when I'm giving off energy of my dysregulation, that other person kind of feels that, which drives like that defensive response because it's their limbic response. And so, in my house, my 5-year-old and I, we have conflicting access needs all the day. And a lot of that is energy exchange. It's like, I'm feeling your energy and I'm like, if I like recoil or if I like energetically like repel, like I'm just like, anyway. So just, it's just awareness. I think that probably you're right. And you can't help it. You don't get to pick what triggers you and you don't get to pick what energy you set out. But it might be helpful to note like what situations are likely to set you off. So like if I know there's like particular people that if I have to have conversations with them, I make arrangements. It's like certain times a day. Maybe I bring someone else to the meeting. Like co-regulation. Just kind of knowing when, so like if you're gonna have to like interact with this agency and that agency or whatever, like maybe you're gonna have someone else around or have your cat on your lap or like whatever it is for co-regulation.
Can I mention a resource that's just like super helpful? It ties into what you're saying.
Yeah, for sure.
So are you guys familiar with Alyssum, like the Pure Respite? A lot of people haven't heard of them and they're like,
tell me everything.
Okay, so they're just the best thing ever. And they're an organization of it's all peers or psychiatric survivors or however you want to say it, people of diverse backgrounds who have had some kind of interaction with the psychiatric system. And the idea is if you're really in like, you don't even have to be in a crisis, but if you're having a really hard time, you're stuck, you just go to this beautiful little house in the country and it's got 2 bedrooms and it's free for anybody in Vermont, like all Vermonters, it's free. And you stay anywhere from like 3 to 5 days. And they just believe that the energy around you is so important. So they just like cook homemade meals and there's just always people to talk to. And I've called them before when I'm like, I can't fill out these forms and I'm going to lose my house and I don't know what to do. And they're like, just come here. And so like I go and they sit down and just go through all the forms and they'll do like whatever, like they're super flexible. It's just like the best thing ever.
That's amazing. I just looked up their website. I'll put that in the chat. And that's incredible. Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah. I do know that the Vermont Center for Independent Living, VCIL, also has folks that help with a variety of things like this. So I'll put that link in the chat as well. And then the other thing I just want to say, I'm going to share screen one more time, that I just for folks in Zoomland in particular, because hopefully we can use this as a resource so that like the community can learn about how like what needs to happen so you don't put people in the position of needing to ask for their own accommodations for their access. Like to normalize access sharing. This really, like I said before, when we are in positions of influence and power, asking, checking in, normalizing access sharing. If it's a safe environment, making that even be part of an introduction. And if you're facilitating a meeting or a group or whatever, does everyone have access, or what does everyone need? Or asking people what they need to do their best work or to feel safe. I'm giving a talk next week, and the person running the event reached out and asked me for my access needs. I thought it was wonderful. That's honestly like never happened to me before. So I think it's just, when it's safe, we just talk about it. Anybody else have anything any other questions or anything else that they wanted to say, particularly if you've not gotten to communicate yet? Okay, well now I'll open up to everyone who has communicated already. If anybody else has anything else to share, go for it.
I think just a last thing that I like to think of everyone. I think when we were first started, we were talking about how to figure out your access needs when you don't really know what they are. And one thing that I have found really helpful is kind of as I was going through grad school, figuring out, okay, when do I learn best when I'm not learning about like academic stuff? I learn best when I'm doing something, so like embroidering. I learn best when I have access to a low sensory environment if I need it, and I learn best when I'm learning about something that I'm interested in. So that's the times when I kind of go into a deep dive. Yesterday I went to a deep dive about the Hudson Canyon off of New York, which was a really cool thing. And figuring out, okay, what does the environment look like when I learn really well, when I do those deep dives into things that I really love, and how can I make the other environments that I don't have as much control over look as much like that as possible. So, okay, I'm going to be able to have something that I can do with my hands during it. I'm going to be able to take a step away when I want. Yeah, that's just a way that's been helpful for me to figure out what I need.
I love that. Matthew.
Yeah, my access need is actually never giving up on the stuff that I do around, management of Vermont and why the system works. And for me, it's, it gives me comfort to know that, my access needs is everybody else's access needs. So when I benefit, everyone else benefits. And that accessibility goes all the way around. For me, it's like, for example, I'm on 7 different subcommittees, which is hard work, but it also is, for me, it's relief that I'm actually participating in a way where that I most felt, involved with, in ways that I can help others, benefit from the system that I benefit to as well. So it's actually the beneficiaries, of, the systems and services that we have. It's also, like you said, there is we need accessibility to these, benefits, services and accessibility components too as well. Every component needs to be accessible. And for me, it's, just to be involved, or wanted to be my help to be involved within, the service realm of Vermont in general is not only a privilege, but an honor too as well, to be serving in these places. And I do it because at the end goal, this is my end goal, that everybody benefits from it. I want to make sure everybody has their accessibility needs met, because when that accessibility needs are met, then everybody is truly benefiting from a system that is so desperately needed. For me, it's just to, continue the good fight, also continue advocating for those individuals that, that may not have a voice. But for me, it's more about, to bring their voices in. We definitely need to bring more community involvement within Vermont, because it's very critical and crucial to have those, important, individuals to join us. We want you to come help change a system that is very limited or very, different way of running the system to a more inclusive, accessibility in mind system so everybody can benefit. Because in my, goal is I want to see you to be at your best. And, when people are at their best, they do wonderful, amazing things within communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. And then the last point I'll make before we wrap up is that, universal design, having flexible multimodal options for everything to be offered so that people don't need to to request specific accommodations for their access needs to be met. That is best practice. And that benefits everyone. Even neurotypical abled people benefit from universal design because everyone benefits from being able to pick what works best for them. So the conversation will continue to evolve, but thank you so much to all of our panelists and for all of you as participants. And I hope to see you. Actually, next week is like a great continuation of this conversation. So we're going to be discussing support services for neurodivergent adults in Vermont, specific services and supports around the state. So come listen or give feedback about what works and doesn't work. Awesome. We appreciate you too. Okay, bye everybody.
Mel, I just have to ask how it went today.